Hello, I'm here with Harry Rice. So, hello, Harry. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. How are you?
Good, good, good. I'm very well, thank you. And we're here to discuss the concept of future-proof yourself. And I'm really keen to find out how yourself, Harry, has developed and self-managed in your career so far and your education so far, because I know you've done lots of interesting things, and that's why I was very keen to sit down and have a conversation with you. I'd love to find out what you've learned along the way, which is very important, obviously academically, and also learned from life experiences. Um, and to find out what's gone well, and also with a bit of hindsight, which is a wonderful thing, what we would have perhaps done differently. Any stories and advice that you've been given, and also any stories and advice that you feel that is worth sharing to others. And plus also to find out what you're currently doing, perhaps at the end of this conversation, about what you're currently doing in terms of future-proofing yourself, ongoing plans. So if we can start off very simply, give us sort of a brief overview of where you're at in terms of career, education, studying, and all the things that you get involved in.
Yeah, so I suppose I've kind of got two paths in what I do. I'm doing a PhD on one side, which is looking at how under different global temperature changes snowfall varies essentially, and then looking about how that impacts where tourists want to visit for their holidays. And then the other part is I run with a couple of friends we've created an app, podcast and live events stream to help students with their mental health, which was kind of brought about by personal experiences. But then the guys I'm working with, one is a software developer, and the other has some kind of background in finance, so that's why I kind of approached them. So yeah, it's a two-stream thing really.
Brilliant. And sort of obviously only share what you're happy to share, but how did the three of you get together to do that?
So I lived with two of them in my last year at university, which is all the help we've had from universities and stuff helping kind of help start us up, all said, don't do that. Don't start with friends because you'll fall out. But I kind of thought, having lived with them, I kind of knew what buttons to push and what buttons not to push, and kind of we understood each other very well. So I lived together with them my last year at university in Durham, and I saw Tom, who's at the time didn't have a job, but wanted to get into software developing. So I kind of approached him knowing he had those kind of skills, and asked if he wanted to help, and he kind of built up those skills and then started working professionally as a software developer, which kind of slowed the progress of what we're doing. But
That's the trouble, isn't it?
Yeah, it means that he kind of learned the skills that he needed to build it properly. So yeah, we had a really good kind of mix of experiences within us.
Wow. And that's so important in my eyes. It's a sort of the starting of building your own little network, isn't it? Of people who you can trust and people that you can rely on and work well with.
Yeah, and yeah, they've been really helpful because I have like less than zero technical knowledge of software and coding and things. So I really needed to lean on Tom for that. And my math skills aren't very good. So when we've been drawing up our kind of financial stuff for our pitch decks, I've needed the help from Dave, who does all the financy stuff. So yeah, it was about getting the right people at the right time. But then I also found, in terms of networking and things, not something that I've ever been particularly keen on or particularly good at. I found that both within academia and the stuff that I'm doing with my startup, is that if you actually just bite the bullet and email someone or approach someone or look for their email somewhere, no matter how high profile they are, a lot of them will respond just because you've taken an interest in their work,
Mm.
especially in academia, because there's such a kind of culture of research just being done for research's sake and no one actually taking any interest in it, that when you do email someone in a different institution saying you're interested in their research, they're like, oh wow, someone's actually interested in this, how can I help them, you know, how can we collaborate? So I actually got myself, one of my supervisors for my PhD left, and I had to get a new one on board, and it just happened to be that I was talking with a guy in Canada who's kind of the world expert in what I'm doing, and he's now my co-supervisor as well. So
Wow.
that power of just sending out a cheeky email here and there is is good.
Well, there's that lovely thing in life. If you don't ask,
Yeah,
you don't get. And a lot of people have watched a lot of my videos and read my book and things will know that networking isn't walking around a room with a business card saying, hello, I'm really important, what's your name, and then you sort of talking to them about what you do for the next 5 years. That isn't networking is exactly as you said, just building those relationships.
yeah, definitely. And I had, so we were lucky enough to win a competition for young startups, and as part of that we got to go to something called Founders Forum, which is it's a huge event held at the Grove in Watford. And unless you won the competition that we did, you had to be worth something like 500 million or run a business worth 500 million. And what I found really interesting was you had a cool range of speakers. I think David Cameron, Nick Clegg, all those really important people. But as someone who looked a bit out of place there because I was much younger than everyone else, people were really interested to actually talk to me because I looked quite out of place, and they knew that I wasn't coming up to them knowing who they were, trying to get something out of them. They were just curious to kind of talk on I suppose a kind of normal level, rather than someone coming up to them with the target of wanting something and kind of steering that conversation. So I found that really interesting, that all these really high profile people, actually the people that they enjoyed talking to the most were the other people that had won this competition who were under 25. I just found that fascinating, that was the kind of preference they had to talk to people.
Well, it is true, because you're showing an interest in them, and they can see that you're not just doing it for certain gains. You're there because that's your passion and that's what you really believe in. And I think that comes across lots, and it's a great way of influencing and persuading people through your passion and showing you're inquisitive and having good conversations with people. So with your startup, is there anything you wish you'd known at the start that you sort of look back on and think, oh, wish I'd have known that?
I think one of the biggest, we're not we're kind of getting there as a startup. We're not there at all yet, but one of the big things I would say was we worked a bit with an entrepreneurship institute at King's in London, and one of the guys there lent me a book. I think it's called The Mum Test, and it's about how, so the way that we kind of started was going to people that we knew, friends, family, whatever, being like, do you think this is a good idea? And the concept of the book was that you can't ask people that know you well and like you, like your mum, because if you ask your mum whether it's a good idea, they're going to say, yes, of course it's a brilliant idea.
It's a brilliant, you're so good, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of about making the feedback you get anonymous, and making the feedback that you so not showing what you were doing at first. So it's not asking leading questions around, do you think this is a good idea? Is this a good idea? It was more like, what do you think would help, rather than does this help? So it's all about not asking leading questions and asking the right people for advice, I think.
Yeah, and there again, that's so important throughout all of our careers. Is just, there's certain people I go to talk to about certain things, and there's certain people I wouldn't even think about talking to, and it's just picking the right ones for the right situation. And I think that's really important in developing your network, or your friendship group for the rest of your career. Is, I've got certain friends that they're great mavericks and brilliant entrepreneurial ideas. I mean, I've got one that sort of tried to get me to buy gold in Singapore. And I said, yeah, but how are we going to get out of Singapore? He goes, I haven't thought about that, but it's a really good price at the moment. And I'm going, but then he comes up with other business ideas. I think that is such a good idea.
Yeah.
And you just need to know who to go to and have a whole surround of different types of people. So any piece of advice, so apart from the book, anything else, any other advice that you've been given that you thought, yeah, that's really helped looking back?
Trying to think off the top of my head. I suppose it would be to not be, this is something that we didn't do. So it would be not to be scared to put your idea out there, or to not to be scared to show something that you've made, because there's a really good quote, I can't remember who said it, but it's perfect is the enemy of good. And it's like, what you do might be good, but you're expecting it to be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect when you send it out, because if you send out something that is rubbish, you're going to find out that it's rubbish. And then hopefully, if you've got the right kind of mindset, you'll improve it. Especially talking about your idea, don't be kind of secretive about it, because people aren't, or most people aren't going to steal it or have the energy to steal it. And actually, most people you speak to, if there's an issue with it, they'll point it out, and it will be to your benefit rather than to your detriment.
Yes, yeah. And I think also it's because, for other people, they wouldn't make it work as well because they haven't necessarily got the passion. I linked in with someone on LinkedIn this morning, and we were talking about future proofing and, his career and things. And he said after 40 years, he lives down in Cornwall. After 40 years, he's finally decided to go and do something that he's always wanted to do. And it's making tabletop games.
Wow.
And I said, look, if you've got the passion, if you've got the love for it, you're going to enjoy it. And that is a great definition of success. And he just, I think he was quite surprised at my response. And I said, yeah, that's really good. And I think, if you've got that passion and drive with it, other people, they may use your idea, but they won't have your passion and drive. So, they won't be able to do it as well as you do. So what's one of the things you've enjoyed the most so far that sort of you've gone, yeah, I've really enjoyed doing that?
I think it's making the podcast, because no one particularly likes the sound of their own voice when it's recorded. But it goes back to that thing about just sending an email and approaching people. 90% of the time they respond saying, oh, I'd love to do this, but I'm too busy or whatever. But then you get one person coming back and saying, oh yeah, let's do it, great. And then you get to have a conversation with them and just learn about, especially within the field that we work in mental health, everyone's experience is so unique. And one of the questions we like to end with is, how do you look after yourself? How do you look after your own well-being? And the range of different things that people do is so interesting. And it's things that, it might not work for everyone, but it works for them. And I can take those away and try them. It might not work for me, but I get all of those ideas for free. And it's, so I just really enjoy talking to people, and people are generally so open about their kind of life experiences, and it's there's so much you can learn from it, I think.
Yes, yeah, very much so. And what we'll do is put a link to your podcasts on this at the end. So people, please go and go and check that out, because I've listened to a lot of yours through your postings on LinkedIn and thoroughly enjoy them. And you do approach it from a different angle. Obviously there's a lot of noise out there on social media about how to do these things, but and you do seem to capture some very clever people who've got some really good important messages. So just tell us a little bit more about what you're actually doing, sort of not as a sales pitch, but just enlighten people a bit more of what you're doing and the purpose of the podcasts.
Yeah, so the podcast is kind of one arm of it, and the aim of that is to speak to as many different people from different fields about their kind of personal experiences with their mental health, but also, we've spoken to psychologists, psychiatrists, researchers about what their professional experiences are. So it's kind of getting a wider range of opinions and perspectives as possible from the podcast. And then we've run a couple of live events, and we were meant to run one last week, but obviously that didn't happen. And the idea of that is to get a panel of speakers on a topic. So the first one we did was on student mental health, and we had a psychologist and a couple of students. The second one was on cricket and mental health. So that was with a former cricketer, a psychologist who's worked with cricket teams, a sports psychologist, and a guy who founded a kind of a charity that goes into cricket clubs and talks about their mental health and well-being issues. So that is kind of to get a different range of perspectives on a topic. So from a kind of performance angle, you had the sports psychologist and the professional cricketer, and then you had a kind of angle where you talked about the illnesses as well, which was super cool. And then last week we were meant to have one around the politics in mental health in politics, and nothing to do with policy or political tribes. It was more about the pressures that people who are working in politics are under. So we had a couple of MPs and then a researcher, and we were meant to hold that with a politics society at a university. So hopefully we can do that in a couple of months. Yeah. And then the last angle is the app, which is it's a combination of three things, which is mindfulness meditation, journaling based on cognitive behavioral therapy. But a big issue I had when I was doing cognitive behavioral therapy is it very much focuses on your negative emotions and how you get out of that and reframing those thoughts. So we've kind of tried to combine it with a more positive twist. And we've essentially finished the app, but with this kind of stuff, because you're collecting quite sensitive data, we need some fairly watertight legal stuff.
Yeah.
So we're waiting. We're getting help from a couple of lawyers to write that up, and then we'll be ready to go. Yeah.
Brilliant. Great. And what's been the most challenging thing in getting all this up and running and out there, alongside just studying?
Yeah, I think probably things that I don't have an expertise in, or the two guys that I'm working with don't have an expertise in, and either having to research that and get it done ourselves, or trying to find someone to help us with it. So one of them was learning how to use recording equipment, which took a long time. For Tom, who does all the coding, that would be learning to build stuff. But we've tried to kind of approach it that, if it doesn't work out in the end, that's completely fine. There's probably a fairly, within all these kind of things, there's a high likelihood that it won't. But it's enabled us to learn new skills that hopefully will be applicable in other places, especially for Tom, because Tom essentially learned to code to help build us this, and now works as a software developer. So yeah, I think.
Has he still got the time to do it for you though?
Well, now he does, yeah, because now he does, because I won't go into too much detail about the company he works for, but
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, best not to. Yeah. Okay, so it's learning skills. So what are your next steps in sort of moving this forward in terms of, you making sure that obviously you're still doing your studying, will that have a clash? Because once you've finished your studying and moving out there into the working world as well, how are you going to sort of, what are the next steps in future-proofing yourself in terms of your career, and also this startup that you're still, you know, moving forward?
Yeah, I think with the startup, it's about I suppose trying to move with the time, so not being wedded to a particular idea too strongly, so we can kind of edit it and change the kind of the things on the app, and maybe change the people that we speak to, and look for the trends in and around the field that we're working in, to try and stay relevant, I suppose. And with the studying, I suppose I kind of tried to pick an area that I thought was going to be particularly relevant in the upcoming years, which is why,
it's a fascinating subject.
Without going into too much detail, why I chose to focus on Scandinavia, because there's an idea that under future temperature changes, those areas would benefit massively from tourism, and a lot of money is going into that. So I kind of tried to focus on an area that I thought would be relevant in the future, and that had lots of trends going towards it. So yeah, I suppose those are the two things: being flexible within that as well. So if opportunities come up to do other areas, to collaborate. One thing I think is really, there's a lot of flaws within academia, but one thing I think is really good is the way that there's loads of interdisciplinary collaboration. So my background is all in geography, and like scientific geography, but I now work in it's like a tourism and business department. So when I have to do marking as part of what I do. I have to mark essays on kind of marketing and that kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
But that means I get to learn about that kind of stuff. It means that the department is really interdisciplinary, and I get to learn from people who are specialists in, you know, hotel management or marketing or those kind of things. So I think that would definitely help to an extent, give me a bit of advantage when I finish.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, good for you. So just to finish off with, can you just, so for people listening to this on the podcast, just tell us how they can find you. Yeah. And obviously people who are going to be watching this on YouTube, we'll put a screen up afterwards, you know, with all your details, and anybody can always contact me and I can pass Harry's details on. So just how can the people find you?
Yeah, so the startup is called Lagom Mind. So on Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, it's Lagom Mind. So if you just search that, it will come up. On LinkedIn, I'm Harald Rice, as we were talking about earlier. Nice Swedish name. But yeah, those are the best ways, I think. And yeah, I welcome anyone getting in contact.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for this. I mean, the reason I've chosen Harry is because we met all sorts of hundreds of years ago when I used to try and coach a local cricket team. And the reason I always like coaching Harry is because he's the only one that just always accepted my decisions. Everyone always used to tell me that it was wrong and they should be batting in a different order and they should be doing this and they should be doing that. And Harry was just so easy to manage. So I've always sort of liked to follow your career and what you've been doing since, because you are always so easy and so pleasant to deal with. So I thank you for that. So thank you very much for your time. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you again, hopefully when, you know, we can start watching and playing cricket again.
I hope so.
So thanks for your time and I'll speak to you soon.
Brilliant.